Hi, my name is Madalo, Samati. I work as a Director of Programs for Creative Center for Community Mobilization, CRECCOM, a Malawian non-government organization. We work on 4 pillars. Pillar number 1 is on girls' education and gender equality and women empowerment. Pillar number 2 is on equitable access to quality education. Pillar number 3 is on climate change and the community resilience. Then pillar number 4 is on the child protection and youth development. And our mission as an organization is to sensitize, mobilize and empower rural communities towards their achievement of their development goals, needs especially, through their effective involvement. So our niche is really to work with the communities to achieve their development needs. So whatever issues come forth, our job is to empower them, to take ownership, one of the problems, and find solutions, because we believe the solutions are right at the grassroots level. I'm a gender activist because I believe that that's how we are going to eradicate poverty in our country and also sustain development. Why am I saying this? I think both a woman and a man were meant to complement, and each one of them has got the potentials and the skills that if they're used to the maximum, I wouldn't have poverty in our country. I'm coming from a background where if it weren't for the power within me, I wouldn't be what we are today, and I wouldn't influence other women and men in my life if it weren't for the education that I had to attain. I always tell this story that my senior sisters who were initiated in our cultural institution, a year later they all got pregnant and dropped out of school. And when I saw that, I told my mom that I'm not going to undergo that initiation ceremony. I knew my future is based on the decision that I would make. Here I am, proceeded with my education without any disturbance and was selected to secondary school and then university. That's who I am. And I believe that every girl is capable of making a difference in their own life and in the life of their families, immediate family and their society, if they are given an opportunity to do that. So the power within is very, very important. At the same time, societal or our cultural institutions also mold us. So it's also very important to work with the cultural institutions to make reforms that would be supportive to the rights of girls as well as the rights of women. We work with these institutions to empower the women and also empower the girls. And they have to look at their cultural values and practices and to see which one of those hinder the rights of women and girls and which one of those promote, because there are also strengths, a lot of strengths in our culture. And for those that need to be eliminated, they have to be eliminated. But this you can't do it from outside. It has to come from the inside. People need to understand first that there's something wrong in our way of doing things. And then when they come to that realization, they're able to come up with solutions which are lasting, because the solutions come from themselves and the solutions are practical, because they look at what would be the threats, what would it make this work. For example, we had an initiation ceremony in one community that made girls who have sex, because that was one of the instructions, you need to practice sex, so that they should see whatever they were being taught, some of the curriculum, they have to put it into practice. When we went there and talked with the communities, they realized there's something wrong here. So they changed that and eliminated that practice anymore. So these are some of the issues that we are very excited about as an organization to make that change, which is forever. And you look at the thousands and thousands of girls whose lives will be saved. They won't catch HIV anymore. They won't get pregnant anymore. They will proceed with their education because of the work that we are doing. We use a gender approach. When we get into the communities, we don't just work with the women, we also work with the men. Gender is about relationship. So if we just handle one part of the relationship and leave out the other, it won't make any difference. How do we work with the women? We get into the communities, and first of all, we get through the gatekeepers, who are the chiefs, the village headmen. Mostly our village headmen are men. So we will go there and introduce ourselves and introduce the purpose why we are there. Then from there, he welcomes us into his village, and we conduct sensitization meetings, and these include both men and women. Thereafter, we establish village forums, which will be representatives of the village people, comprising of both male and female. We make sure there's a mix. And also inside there, we make sure that there are culture gatekeepers. So we train the facilitator, and we make sure there's a balance. It has to be both 50-50, male and female. We train them on how they can facilitate discussions at the village level. So on a regular basis, they sit down to look at their issues. First of all, the first activity they do is to do action research. So they go around in their village to find out their cultural practices and why they do what they do. Where did it come from? Then from there they go through, will find the findings that they have and understand why they do some of the things that they do. Then one by one they start to tackle each and every value, cultural value and practice. And they look at it in the context of nowadays, because it's no longer the 16th century. This is the 21st century. That they make a decision. I think this is not good for us today. It's affecting our women, it's affecting our girls, and it's affecting all of us. Because when our women catch HIV/AIDS, the men also catch it. The children suffer, and so on and so forth. When our women are poor, the family is poor, and everybody is poor. There's no progress. So they critically look at their life and their values, and one by one they start to make solutions. After making a decision, they go back to the chief and present their findings. And the chief calls the whole village, and the village forum presents their findings for that particular issue. And they agree on a decision. And it's the duty of the forum to monitor what the villagers have agreed. So you can see it's the people themselves that are identifying the problem. The people themselves finding a solution. They themselves implementing the solution and monitoring and evaluating whatever decisions that they make. There are always challenges when we're dealing with the social beings, especially on issues of culture. Attitude takes a long time, but given the right approaches, people are able to change. We are seeing that sometimes even policymakers are gender actors. When you bring out some of the advocacy issues that require attention, especially when it has to do with culture, there's a lot of sensitivity by policymakers, who I think most of them become political as well, because I'm seeing that somehow professionalism has gone away from our policymakers. There are power issues. They are scared that if they talk about these issues, they will lose the votes. The government of the day will not give them good positions because they are tackling sensitive issues. I think this is one of the challenges that we are experiencing as the civil society organizations. Secondly, I think also the systems. Our cultural gender norms, they are displayed at all levels, regardless of education. So even our systems require some reform. Much as we have very good policies in place, gender positive policies, but implementation remains a huge problem. There's a huge disconnect. So it's not just because of our grassroots cultural values, but when we work with the grassroots and we see change, the systems that are in place are also not very, very supportive to that change. So for example, Malawi formulated the readmission policy. It was one of the first countries to do that in the early 90s, where girls that got pregnant were allowed to come back to school, which was not the case before. Despite that, the schools were not ready for the girls. So the teachers and the school administrators were supposed to support this policy, but they were the ones in the forefront hindering these girls to come back to school. So this is what I'm talking about, systems being in place and being prepared to make the changes, the necessary changes that are there within our policies. We are all in it together, and I want to assure you that wherever you are, at which corner of the world, there are people somewhere that are also working on similar things. And when we keep that fire in our small world, that fire is rising up, and at global level we are going to make a difference sooner or later. It's going to be time when there will be no one, nowhere, where somebody has to be victimized, be a victim of gender-based violence. We need to keep that fire with our communities. Let's start from there, because that's where change must start. And when we empower our grassroots people, whether the policymakers want it or not, they will dance to the tune of the people. Thank you.